Hi everybody, a little bit of a different video for you here today. Many of you know that I am a knitter. I have been really enjoying knitting a particular thing here recently. I am really late to the Sophie Scarf game, but Petite Knits has a really great pattern called the Sophie Scarf, and it is a pattern that makes a thin a thin scarf. It can either be, you can either wrap it around your neck twice or wrap it around and tie in the front once like an ascot. Really super cute. Go on Instagram and Pinterest and look for Sophie Scarf. You'll see a bazillion of them. I love them. I have knit a few. I've really enjoyed it. It's a great knit. And now when I first started knitting the Sophie Scarf, I was very unsure of what to do because I had never done an Icord binding or Icord edging before. So I wanted to kind of do a very quick demonstration on how to start this scarf. There's no videos for how to start the Sophie Scarf, and I know it can be very confusing for some new knitters. So what I'm going to do here is I just made my slip knot. I'm using size 3 double point bamboos just because these were the only size 3s I had laying around right now. You're also going to want a row counter of some sort and a little stitch marker. So the Sophie Scarf starts with 6 stitches. So I just did my slip knot, and then I'm going to put 6 stitches. Now I do have to apologize if I fumble a little bit because knitting and watching me knit through a camera is a little awkward. So now I have 6 stitches on my needle here. There we go. And so I have my tail here, and I'm going to really quickly just tie a little knot in my tail so that it stays out of my way and it doesn't confuse you. Okay, so the Sophie Scarf starts out with 6 stitches. We're going to be knitting 6 and then slipping 6. And that may be a little confusing if you've never done an I-cord binding. So that's what I'm here to help you with. So we're going to knit our first 3 stitches while, of course, leaving your tail in the back. 1, 2, 3, and now we're going to bring our yarn in front, hold it down, and slip those 3 stitches, 2, as you would purl. So we're slipping as if to purl. So we've got 3 knit stitches and 3 slip stitches, and our working yarn is right in the middle. What do we do? Well, first, that's our first row. So we're going to hit number 1. And now you turn your work around. So over here we have your tail yarn, and we're going to ignore that. We've got our working yarn coming from the back here. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to knit these 3 stitches that we just slipped. And so it's going to create a little bit of a pull there, and you want to pull those first couple of stitches. You want to pull them a little bit because we're trying to make these 6 stitches narrow. And with this little pull there, you got to kind of pull it over a little bit. Now it's normal that your first few stitches, they're going to be loose. It's normal for these stitches to be loose every time you do this. And now we're pulling in front, and we're going to slip those stitches as if to purl. Well, once I get them in, sorry, looking through the camera to do this is a little difficult. Slip them as if to purl. So I'm trying to go slow so you can see. So we got these stitches here knit, and we slip these to purl. That's the end of row 2. So now flip around. Now you're going to see here that we've got a flat edge coming up, and then we've got these messy looking stitches here. That's normal. Don't even worry about that yet. So leave your tail alone And let's go 3 more knits. Remember, this is pulling over from the back. Pull it a little tight. Now, not super crazy tight, but you want there to be some tension there. 3rd stitch. And now we'll pull our yarn in front, and we're going to slip these as if to purl. There we go. Row 3. Now we are on row 4. Apologize for the ink on my fingers. I have another video that I am doing, and I just changed out the ink for one of my pens to some really beautiful Pilot Iroshizuku Fuyugaki. So I've got inky fingers. We're slipping these 3 stitches as if to purl. Now you see when you do a few rows, you've got this little pull back here, and you might think, oh no, I did something wrong. You didn't do anything wrong. Don't worry about that. That's completely normal, and you won't be able to see it soon. So that was the end of row 4. Now we're on row 5. And you'll see here, you'll see those little pulled stitches too, but don't worry about those. So we knit 3. Making sure to pull those few stitches. Not super tight, but you want there to be some tension there. And we slip those 3 off. 5. Row 6. And we knit the first 3. And I apologize if it's a little hard to see too, because I tend to knit with my fingers pretty close to my knitting. Don't forget to mark your row. I knit with my fingers pretty close to my knitting because when I'm knitting usually or regularly, when I'm not filming myself, I knit pretty fast. And so I like to keep my movements very short and sweet and right where they need to be. Just slip those stitches. So I don't know if you can tell now. Well, let's go ahead and log that. We're on row 7 now. You see how these pulled stitches that we were worried about before, you see how they're kind of being hidden now? They're slowly being hidden by these I-cord edges here. And as we go, those will roll over too, because the I-cord edges is like a roll of knitting. So as we get higher and higher, the edges roll over and they cover up those little pulls of the yarn. You just have to kind of get up far enough to where you can see it. So knit 3, 1, 2, 3, pull your yarn to the front and slip those 3, 3. So now we are on row 8. Now row 8 is where you are always going to decrease and increase. Now it's important to use a row counter because if you're knitting and then you get called away and you have to put your knitting down, you want to know what row you're at because we are only increasing and decreasing on the 8th row. And that's going to make it so that we're going to have one straight line for one side of the scarf, and then the other side is going to go off to the side like that. It's going to increase very slowly. So we want to make sure we're only increasing on that side. So this is my 8th row, and I've just marked the side of the increases. So for the increase, you knit 2 stitches, 1, 2, and then for the 3rd stitch, we're going to knit front and back. So we're going to knit this stitch, and as we pull it through, and ordinarily we would just pull it off, now we're going to kind of come back here, and we're going to put that needle right back through the back of that loop again, knit it, and then pull it off. So we've just increased a stitch that has that little bump there. And so that stitch will always have that little bump there. As we go through and we knit and we increase more stitches, these stitches in the middle that we've increased that are all, I'm going to go back to 0 because this is row 1 now. The stitches that we increase are all going to be bump stitches in the center. The only flat cord stitches will be the I-cord binding, the I-cord edging. So now we are on our first row again. So what I'm going to do real quick is I'm just going to go through 8 rows, and I'm going to show you how to get all the way up to do the next increase. And then I'm going to give you a look at the scarf that I just knit so that you can see how it's going to go, how it's going to kind of turn out a little bit. So row 1 here, 1, 2, now we have 4 stitches to knit, 3. So the middle stitches are all going to be, the middle increase stitches are all going to be garter stitch. Now we're going to slip 3 as if to purl, hit our row counter. That was row 1. Now we're on row 2. And we knit 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we pull our yarn in front and we slip 3 stitches. Row 2. Knit 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Slip those last 3. We're always going to be slipping the last 3 stitches. And hit the row counter. And if for some reason you accidentally knit those last 3 stitches, it's very easy to just go back and unknit them. Basically you knit backwards. You just unknit them and remove them, and then you can fix that. Slip those last 3 because you always want those last 3 stitches to be slipped, because that's what's going to create the I-cord edging. And if you accidentally knit them, then there's going to be a disturbance in the force there, disturbance in the side edging there, and it will be very noticeable. So you want to make sure that you never forget. And sometimes I've seen some people who's posted their, progress of their work, and some people will put a stitch marker in between those, like after the first 3 or after their first 3 stitches, and then they'll put them, one right before their last 3 stitches as a reminder. And you can totally do that as well, if that would be helpful to you. So the Sophie scarf actually knits up quite fast. I was able to complete the one I just did the other day in just a few hours. And I was really glad for my little row counter here, because, as a mom, you get to sit down and knit for a little while, but then you got to get up and do something for a kiddo, or, got to go to the bathroom, you know how it goes. So this is we just finished row 7 now, and this is row 8, and this is our increase row. And we know that because we have the stitch marker here. And as you get up further and further, if you want to keep that stitch marker on so that you know what side is the increase, then just take it off and then move it up as you go further. That's all. So we knit 2, 1, 2, and now we're going to knit front and back. Knit front, flip it around to the back, go underneath that back stitch, grab that yarn and pull it through, and now we have increased another stitch, and we just continue to slip these stitches off as if to purl. And now I'm going to reset my stitch counter, because now I am back to row 1. So you can see now that this line right here, which is going to be your straight side, is just straight on down. You're starting to see some garter bumps in between the 2 I-cords, And this side of the I-cord is going to start moving diagonally as you continue knitting. So what it's going to look like, take this off for a minute, it's going to end up looking like this. So this is the straight side, and this right here is the side that we increased on. So all of your increased stitches, increased and then subsequently knit stitches, are all going to be in garter stitch right in between. And so that's what the Sophie Scarf looks like. Now as you increase and decrease stitches, there will be little disturbances in the edges of your knitting, which is normal. It's more noticeable in your decrease stitches. So here's a decrease stitch, here's a decrease stitch, here's a decrease. So you see how you can see the little holes there? It's more noticeable depending on the yarn that you're using. I'm using a cotton bamboo yarn, so it's pretty soft, but it's a little bit more noticeable. If you're using wool, wool is pretty squishy, and you know, it's very forgiving, so you probably won't see them in wool. But just bear that in mind when you're choosing what you want to knit your Sophie Scarf out of as well. But anyway, the Sophie Scarf is a great knit, absolutely adorable and gorgeous to wear. I will include some pictures of it in the very end, so that you can see some pictures from Pinterest, so you can see kind of like how it looks and whatnot. Now if you want to, at the end when you're done with your scarf, you can block it. I chose not to, just because I really only block if I have to. But a lot of people block their Sophie Scarves as well, and that will help the stitches to not be so noticeable as well, and it'll help it lay nicely. So there you go. I hope this has been helpful to you in some way. I hope that you enjoy knitting your Sophie Scarf. And if you like seeing these little, you know, knitting videos from me, if you have any interest in these, let me know, and I would be more than happy to do more in the future. I love knitting, and I'm always knitting something, so I would be happy to share about my knitting. Thank you guys so much for watching. Take care.